In this video, we are going to create our first application. But before that, I would like to talk a little bit about how an Android application works and what are the components of every Android application. Every Android application has two parts, an XML or layout file and also a Java file. The layout file is the part that you define the looks of your application and also where the user interacts with. For example, where the user can enter some text or maybe touch on a button. The Java file is the part that you put your Android app's logic. For example, you decide what to do with your user's input in your Java file. But how these two work together? Well, with the help of another tool called Gradle. Gradle will handle the communication between your layout and Java file. And not just that, it will manage the connection between different files like different images and audios that you have in your project. And also external libraries if you use them in your application. In fact, we won't work that much with Gradle. We just use that whenever we want to implement some external library in our project. But we will be working with layout file and Java file a lot. Okay, let's create our first project. You can do so by clicking on this Start a New Android Studio project. As you can see, in here there are some predefined templates. It means that they have some codes that has been written to some level. These are not complex templates and you can create them if you want from scratch. But those are nice guys and have prepared some pre-built templates for us. As you can see, there are a lot of them. Google Maps, let's say navigation drawer, this simple basic activity which only has a button and a menu. You can create all of them by yourself. We will see how we can create them. As you can see, most of these templates have the name activity in them. If you remember from content video, I said that we will have an entire session talking about activities and fragments. But for now, you can think of activities as a different part of your application. For example, if your application has different pages, an activity is one of those pages. It's not accurate, it might not be technical, but for now, we can go with that explanation. Okay, click on this empty activity and click next. In here, you need to define some features for your application. In here, I'm going to name my project. I'm going to name it Hello World, as it's a custom among programmers to name their first project Hello World for no special reason. You can name it whatever you want. In the second field, you need to name your package. Notice that the name of your package needs to be unique. And the convention here is to type your website or domain name in backward. For example, my website is makecode.org. I have typed org.makecode.hello. But if you don't have a website or domain, you can type something like this. You can type com.example. The name of your project. I have a website, so I'm going to stay with org.makecode.hello. This package name is what your application will be identified in Play Store. And later on, for example, if you want to update your project, your application, you need to pass this package name to Play Store. In the next part, you need to select a location to save your project. As you can see in here, I have Hello World 2. This shouldn't be the case for you because I have another project called Hello World. It has added this number 2 for me. Just choose on this folder and select the path that you want to save your project. For the language, for now, we are going to use Java. We will be using Kotlin in future sessions, but for now, I'm going to stay with Java. In the next part, you need to define a minimum API level. You can select whatever you want, but if you select an older version like API 15, your application might not have all the functionalities that a newer version of API has. But if you select a lower version, probably more devices will be able to install your application. For example, by the time that I'm recording this video, if I select API level 15, the estimation is that 100% of devices will be able to install my application. And if you select an upper version like API level 28, it says that less than 1% of the devices will be able to install this application. If you want to have all the new functionalities in Android, you can select the newer version, but your application might not be installed in lower versions. I'm going to stay with API level 19 for this video, and maybe for the rest of the course. The estimation is 95%. That's good in my opinion, but you can change it to whatever you want. It's a balance that you should decide. Leave these two checkboxes empty for now. We will be talking about both of them in future videos. For now, let's just click on this finish and create our project. If it's the first time that you run Android Studio, it will probably take longer than usual to create and build your project. You might get some warnings when you create your first application, warnings like rendering. It says that it wasn't able to render your project successfully. If you did get that problem, go to this top bar in here and click on build and rebuild your project. Sometimes you might need to go to this file and close your project and open it once again in order to dismiss those warnings, but usually you shouldn't get any warning, like I didn't get any one in here. You can minimize this build panel for now, we don't need that yet. These are the two files that I was talking about, the Java file and the XML file, which will contain the information about the layout. We will be working with Java in the next video. For now, I'm just going to close it. In your XML file, you have two options, design and text. I'm going to stay with design for now. I can minimize this project panel as well. But let's talk a bit about this project panel. You have different options. For example, you have this project pane, project view. It will show you exactly how files are saved on your device. For example, if you go to this app and source folder, to this main, you can find your Java files and resources like this layout file. But I'm going to stay with Android view because it's much more comfortable with eyes to follow different files. I'm going to minimize this project for now in order to have more spaces. As you can see, Android Studio has created this text for me. I'm going to leave it for now. As you can see, there are two different views in here, this design view and this blueprint. This blueprint will be useful, for example, for the items that are invisible at the time. It can be useful, but for now I'm going to disable that. You can do so by clicking on this item in here and select only the design view. You can add different elements to your application by clicking and dragging one of these items. For example, if I want to have this button, I can drag it down in here. As you can see, for example, for this text view, there are a lot of attributes in the right panel. For example, the text in here says hello world. The text in this text view is hello world. I can change it by saying just hello. You can type hello, and by pressing enter, its text will be changed. You have different attributes for your text view in here. For example, this ID part top in here is what your element, your UI element will be recognized in your Java file. The ID should be unique. For example, I can type text view. Be aware that you can't put spaces for your ID. For example, I can type something like this. Also, it shouldn't have any weird character. Let's type text view and press enter. There are a lot more attributes for your UI elements. You can find them, for example, from here, or maybe on this all attributes. You can see there are a lot of them. We will be talking about most of them in UI session. For now, I'm just going to stay with this text and this ID. You have different options for your button as well. As you can see, Android Studio has given an ID for my button. You can change its text. We will be talking about this other text in future videos, but for now, I'm just going to leave it empty. Beside this design view, I have another option down in here, this text view, which you can see the exact XML code that your element has been created with. XML is a markup language and you define different UI elements with it, like HTML if you are a web developer. You have the exact attributes that you had in design view in here as well. For example, this ID, you can define it in your XML file as well. We can even delete this button by selecting that text and pressing delete. You can see that delete has been removed from my view. Also, if you don't see this preview, you can enable it from here. Enable and disable it from here. Let's just Control Z and get back our button. As you can see, there are a lot of attributes that we don't know anything about them yet. We will be talking about all of them in future videos. For now, let's just take a look at some of them. For example, this ID, we have talked about that. With this text, we can define a text for our button or our text view. Every UI element needs to have a width and height. This wrap content will wrap the size of our UI element. There are other options as well, for example, match parent. We will be talking about all of them in future videos. As you can see, I'm getting some red warning in here. It means that something is wrong with my UI, and that's right, because I haven't constrained this button to anywhere. It will be floating in my view, and in different screen sizes, it can be in different places. When you are working with constraint layout like I'm working right now, you need to chain or constraint your UI element to, for example, your parent. Let's add a constraint to this button. For example, I can chain it to different side of my screen and also to the bottom of this text view. As you can see, the error has been gone and also some attributes have been added to this button. I'm going to stop the video in here. In the next video, we will define and identify these two elements in our Java file. See you guys in the next video.